Hello, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine War News Update, the second part thereof for the 15th of October 2025. Quite a lot to go through because there's been a NATO meeting today, followed by a Ukraine Defence Contact Group, which has, well, as it often does, the kind of Ramstein group, produced some pledges from a number of countries. Just as a bit of context, the Kiel Institute has brought out some figures that suggest that military allocations from European countries fell by 57% compared to January to June 2025, even when their contributions to the NATO PURL initiative were included. The monthly average of all military aid during this period was thus 43% below the level of the first half of 2025. There are, I'd say, caveats applied to this because I'm not going to be as concerned about, I mean, it depends on funding, and this will include funding, but hopefully Ukraine is able to build more stuff themselves. So I'd need to look into I'm sure they would have taken this into account, because actually when Ukraine is building stuff themselves, it's often getting funded from nations, allied nations, and so that would be included in the assistance because they are donations of military aid, even though it's funding or financial aid. So maybe it is taking that into account. We can see here that the United States from 2022 to 2024, the average aid was pretty high in monthly terms, 3.5 billion euros on average, made up about 50-50 the US and everyone else. And then, as you can see, from January to June 2025, hardly any aid from the US, and it's all pretty much entirely Europe there. And then there's this PURL, which is still Europe and other nations such as, well, it depends whether the UK is included in Europe, but then you get Canada, Japan, Australia, other nations as well thrown in. I don't know whether any of those nations are contributing to the PURL initiative. I think Canada is. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know if that's fatigue with the war. Whether people have exhausted their stocks, or whether there is aid going, but it's just being funded in different ways. Yeah, want to have a look deep into the data. Okay, Pete Hegseth has spoken because he has turned up as Defense Secretary to the NATO meeting. Hegseth at the opening of another Ramstein, the meeting took place afterwards. If there is no path to peace in the short term, the US and allies will take the necessary steps to impose even greater costs on Russia for its aggression. Just like to see Pete Hegseth get a little bit, I think, rhetorically robust against Russia. This is good news. I'm wondering whether there is an element of benefit for Ukraine if he goes down the whole kind of lethality warfighter route that we've heard him discuss in terms of what the American military needs to be. You know, he's been he gave that talk to all the leaders, but he's been talking a lot at any opportunity he can get to say, oh, this is all about lethality, and our warfighters are going to be fit, and they're going to be butch, and they're going to be, etc., all that kind of stuff. But there's a sense of him trying to be a strong man himself, see the military as a shining light of strength and capability and lethality, projecting that out to the world from the US. Well, actually, if that's what he's all about at the moment, then if the US is going to help Ukraine, then assistance to Ukraine could be like a reflection of that. And it could be that feeling might be tapped into here. The US Department of War is ready to do such an act as only the United States can do. That's the kind of exactly what I'm talking about there. A deadly NATO led by Europe and a reliable Ukrainian army are the most effective deterrents to Russian aggression. I would actually say Ukraine being inside NATO is the most effective deterrent. Under the leadership of President Trump, we are going to end the war in Ukraine. The war must end. Okay, fairly typical there. He's then, according to Max 25, come out and said that NATO's commitment to Ukraine is intensifying and, quote, will soon translate into real capabilities. So something is brewing. Is this just Tomahawks, or is there more to it than that? Speaking before a meeting of NATO defence ministers in Brussels, Hegseth stated that Trump's peace through strength strategy for resolving wars is working. Well, actually, that's what Ukraine's been asking for, but the US hasn't been doing that. The US hasn't been supporting Ukraine for the last 7 months. They haven't been giving Ukraine the strength to therefore bring about peace in a just and sustainable manner. They haven't done that. So the fact he's saying that now, I think this is quite important. And it could pave the way for the US being more involved in militarily supporting Ukraine in some ways. He said peace comes not when you use strong words or wag a finger, but when you have a strong and real capabilities that adversaries respect. Again, both these elements, you know, what he's saying at Ramstein and what he's saying here for NATO, I think can be interpreted as positive for Ukraine. Like I've said to you before, if the US wanted to help Ukraine on January the 21st, Ukraine could have prevailed in this war, I think, by now. I think if you'd had 7 months of massive sanctions on Russia and then huge amounts of aid going for the United States and Europe to Ukraine, things could look very different now. But at the same time that the contact group are meeting, the Ramstein format group is meeting, and that NATO ministers are meeting to discuss Ukraine and support for Ukraine against Russia. We have Hungary's foreign minister turning up in, where is it? I don't know, somewhere in Russia, probably Moscow. Yeah, Moscow. Turning up for the Russian Energy Week. So here's a foreign minister being greeted by Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak, reasserting Budapest belongs to Russia again. Belongs to Moscow, says Tim White here. He's then come out and said that Hungary would suffer if it was cut off from Russian energy. The country's Foreign Minister Peter Shiharte said this during Russian Energy Week, quote, we really cherish our cooperation with our Russian partners and colleagues in the field of energy. Why? Because of our experience. My question is, why should we cut this relationship? Well, that's like me saying, before I knew Jeffrey Dahmer was a serial killer, we had this wonderful relationship. Why should I stop having this wonderful relationship with Jeffrey Dahmer? Because he's a complete bastard? Because he's a serial killer? And that makes you like morally bankrupt by like seeking to be good mates with someone who is evil, etc., etc. You get the point. Peter Shiharte is talking out of his posterior. Physically speaking, if we are being cut from the Russian gas source, the remaining infrastructure will not be able to supply the country. If the oil pipeline Druzhba is being phased out, the remaining infrastructure cannot supply the country. Okay, well, do something about it. Get some contingencies working pretty damned quickly. Moving on to Germany. So the German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has announced during the Ramstein format meeting that Berlin will allocate an additional 2 billion euros to Ukraine. According to him, the support package will include air defense systems, including Patriot interceptors, radar complexes, artillery systems and missiles. In addition, Germany plans to provide 2 more IRIS-T air defense systems with a large number of guided missiles, man-portable air defense systems, so these man-pads that can go on the shoulder to shoot at aerial threats that are usually within a 5-kilometer range, anti-tank weapons, modern communication equipment and small arms. So Germany continuing to really come up with the goods for Ukraine. Honestly, impressive. Sweden is ready to deepen its military support for Ukraine. Defense Minister Paul Jonsson has confirmed Stockholm is preparing a joint aid package with Norway and Denmark worth 250 million euros. and is open to further contributions. Now, I don't know what is included in that proposal, but we hear that the Netherlands is providing Ukraine with another 90 million euros aid package, according to the Ministry of Defence. The funds will be used for the purchase and development of Ukrainian drones, and that's on top of, I think, was it 600 million they pledged the other day when Ruben Breckelmans, the defence minister, was in Odessa. You have Lithuania join the PURL initiative, so that's the American provision. They will contribute $30 million, according to the Ministry of Defence of Lithuania. So that's really good news. I've got more PURL stuff coming later. But actually, for the time being, Slovenia joins the PURL initiative to purchase weapons for Ukraine. The amount of the contribution is not disclosed. Funding is already provided for the defence budget for 2025. The funds will be used to strengthen air defence systems to protect energy and civilian infrastructure in the winter. And in fact, I'm going to bring in the PURL now because I think that's a good time. We have some stats. First of all, we're going to go here, which is US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said NATO allies are expected to buy and transfer even more American weapons to Ukraine under the PURL initiative agreed during a key meeting in Brussels. And of course, there's something that leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth here because, people like Pete Hegseth are singing the praise of the PURL initiative, saying, hey, look, we're going to do this, and as though the US should get some kind of plaudits for this, some kind of commendation. But they're effectively grifting off the war. They're selling stuff to allies who are stumping up the cash, and they're charging a premium for this, as they have admitted in the open. What was it, a 10% premium they're putting on? It's just like, it really leaves a bad taste in my mouth, rather than helping Ukraine. And also they could be doing both, right, which is talking about helping Ukraine to an optimal level, and also hoping to sell allies lots of weaponry to support Ukraine too. Now, a list of countries that have allocated funding to the procurement of American weapons for Ukraine through the PURL initiative. Jeff says that, this is Jeff2146, who's a very good source on these matters. The Dutch have contributed 500 million. Yeah, the Canadians 500 million. Germans 500 million. Swedes 275 million. The Norwegians 118.1 million. We have, that's Belgium, 100 million euros. Denmark 580 million Danish kroner. Don't know what that translates to. I know most of these are dollars, a couple of them are euros, so sorry about that. You can see them on the list here anyway. 50 million euros from Portugal, plus another 50 million. I don't know what the details are there. Lithuania 30 million, Estonia 10 million, Latvia 5 million. UK not in there because we're doing our own things. More on that to come. Finland is joining NATO's PURL initiative as well to jointly procure US weapons for Ukraine, according to their defense minister Antti Hakkinen, announcing that ahead of the NATO defense ministers meeting in Brussels. He confirmed that a new Finnish aid package will be announced this week. Fantastic, although you don't often know what the Finns are providing. They keep it very close to their chest. Estonia will transfer a batch of drones worth tens of millions to Ukraine this week, and will also allocate funds for the PURL too, and that is according to their Ministry of Defence. So loads of people piling in to support Ukraine through buying US equipment. Now, all F-16s promised by Belgium will be delivered to Ukraine, according to Defence Minister Franken, confirming that at NATO HQ. He clarified that delivery doesn't mean immediate deployment because training is still underway and takes time. Quote, every F-16 we promised will be in your country, no doubt about it. So I presume that they're assuring that it's not going to happen like it did when a whole bunch of the Danish F-16s had to go to Argentina on behest of the United States. Okay, UK supplies Ukraine. I have reported this with over 85,000 drones in 6 months. This is ahead of schedule. As part of the defence support that the UK is providing, they've invested £600 million, nearly $800 million, in drone production for Ukraine in 2025. And this includes tens of thousands of FPV drones designed for frontline use. Excellent news that the UK is so heavily involved there. The UK has delivered over 85,000 drones to Ukraine in just 6 months, investing £600 million this year alone. The funding supports production and supply, including new Octopus interceptors designed to take down Russian Shaheds. So it looks like everyone's piling in to support with interceptors. I wonder if they're using the same design as the Sting Wild Hornets drones. Thousands of these will soon be entering service monthly. So actually that's really good news that could be coming online very soon. Soon be entering service. Yeah, so that's to say that there'll be a monthly monthly produced batch of drones that will go to Ukraine to just keep their defences going. Now, the UK and Canada will join the EU plan to tap a portion of the almost $300 billion in Russian assets to support Ukraine, according to Bloomberg. UK sanctions have frozen more than £25 billion or $33.3 billion of Russian assets, while the EU holds around $200 billion or $232 billion. So UK and Canada seeking to go the same way as the EU in terms of how they are going to support the frozen assets being used. This plan would provide loans to Ukraine to purchase weapons and bolster its economy without seizing the assets outright, though through a mechanism that would avoid this. The EU aims to reach a political agreement on using the assets at a meeting in Brussels next week. So I have to see how that goes. And the EU will propose launching joint drone and air defence projects in the coming months as part of an ambitious 5-year plan to rearm the continent, according to Bloomberg. By the end of 2027, the plan wants the EU doing 40% of its defence procurement jointly. Well, the intention is to get up to, was it 60%, 65%? I think it's 60% as part of the defence strategy that the EU has produced. So I presume there are stepping stones to that, and by 2027 it needs to be 40%. Now, Kaja Kallas from the EU has been in Kiev just recently, has handed over several dozen units of equipment for border guards. In 2024 to 2025, the EU has already handed over 40 vehicles. Considering how much the losses of vehicles on the front have increased, the pickup trucks that Kaja Kallas has bought are a significant help. So that's brilliant, delivering several dozen trucks there to some happy recipients of those trucks. So that is Kaja Kallas. Moving on, what's this? Yes, so a little synopsis on the Czech initiative from here. Praise the LF, is that right? Or is it an S? I don't know. Praise the Steph. No, that is Steph. Come on. By the end of September, Czechia has supplied, or will have supplied. No, we're in October. Yeah, that's right. By the end of September, Czechia had supplied over 3.7 million pieces of large caliber artillery ammunition, including nearly 1.3 million large caliber shells this year. Thanks mainly to Czech supplies, the ratio of artillery fires has decreased from 10-1 in favour of Russia in the spring of 2024 to today's ratio of 2-1. And assuming that the same accuracy levels have been maintained, then that would be fantastic. That, you know, we talked a lot about how Ukraine has sought to overcome the lack of artillery ammunition, lack of firing at the Russians, by making sure that every single shot counts, that they've got that accuracy in there. So now if they're down to 1-2 and maintain that accuracy, then, you know, that would be very much, very, very in favour of, well, it's a move in the right direction no matter what. Okay, so today the Czech Republic is the main supplier of large caliber ammunition. The total military aid provided by Czechia to Ukraine since its invasion by Russia amounts to about $833 million worth in various forms. Since 2022, Czechia has supplied Ukraine with 390 pieces of surplus vehicles and tens of thousands of pieces of various types of large caliber ammunition, all worth around $276 million. The second area is financial contributions to military assistance to Ukraine. As part of this, Czechia have so far supplied Ukraine with military equipment worth $311 million. Czechia financed the purchase of ammunition from the Czech manufacturer STV Group. So this is where they're going to get some kind of economic stimulus for helping Ukraine. And that's what many nations seek to do, which is, can we localize production of whatever it is to our home country and provide our goods to Ukraine rather than either spending money abroad or spending money in Ukraine. Czechia financed the purchase of ammunition from the Czech manufacturer STV Group, in 2024 to 2025 to a total of 81.4 million. The last two areas of Czech aid to Ukraine are the training of Ukrainian armed forces in Czechia and neighbouring countries, and national contributions to the European Peace Facility, the EPF, the NATO Comprehensive Assistance Package, NATO CAP, and the Czech Drone Coalition Fund. Czechia has contributed $148.1 million to these forms of aid to date. A total of $16 million has been spent on training nearly 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers. They're also training F-16 pilots, aren't they, in Czechia too? So that's a really positive development. Let's hope that continues. Obviously, with Andrej Babiš running the shop now, it's going to be less supportive of Ukraine. Now, Max 25 reports that the US representative to NATO, this is it Mike Whitaker? Announced that Washington will make an important announcement tomorrow, which is today, regarding arms supplies to Ukraine. So are we still waiting for Pete Hegseth to say something really significant in terms of what Ukraine is going to receive from the US? I guess I'll have a quick check at the end of the video to see if there's been any update. Now, delivery of Tomahawks to enhance Ukraine's ability to strike Russia, NATO top official says, is the delivery of Tomahawks is to enhance Ukraine's ability. And this is the idea for many, that Tomahawks are actually going to go, that this has been decided. Despite Moscow's aggressive rhetoric, the official who spoke on condition of anonymity expressed doubt that Russia would have any concrete action in response to the potential deliveries. I mean, the thing is, what can they do, Russia, short of military or chemical warfare? They, the old adage that I always mention, which is you would if you could, you answer, you can't. Like, if there was some other rattling that Russia could do, they would be doing that. Anything that can help to scare Ukraine, they would do. But there's nothing left in the tank. So when they do kind of rattle the saber concerning non-nuclear kinetic warfare, that is just seen as, the boy who cries wolf. Because they don't have the capability to strike Russia back at the moment with anything other than more of what we're already doing. When you look at the tactics on the front line, it's just pretty much the same tactics they've been using previously, which is all to do with superiority of personnel and equipment. And then, they are, I don't know, they are ramping up the number of Shaheds and missiles that they're sending, but there's no change in capability. It's just a change in capacity. There's no categorical shift in what Russia is doing. So, really, what can they say to the US giving them more weapons like the Tomahawks? I don't think they can, and other than rattle the saber, and then hopefully Europe and the US and allies will go, whatever. We don't think you're serious. Now, the Financial Times reports that the US will be able to transfer only 20 to 50 Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, not enough to change the course of the war. The US has about 4,150 Tomahawk missiles, but will be able to transfer only a few dozen to Ukraine. New purchases are limited, says the former Pentagon official Mark Kanchian. But actually, as I played to you yesterday, Donald Trump has, or was it this morning? yeah, I think it was this morning actually, he was talking about the US having loads of Tomahawks. Hey, we got loads of them. And if you are a leader that's going to say, hey, we got loads of Tomahawks, and he was kind of joshing with the reporters saying, look, do you want Tomahawks? And then he was sort of joking about how the Democrats would use Tomahawks on the Republicans and blah, blah, blah. But all that aside, essentially, he's like bigging up the US's stockpiles of Tomahawk cruise missiles. And it'd be kind of weird if he was doing that and then said, oh, we're only going to give you one. But this could be Trump also looking at sheer, just flatly looking at numbers and thinking 4,150 is a shed load of cruise missiles. Oh my goodness. We've got 4,150 of them. Well, we can give a load of those. So he may genuinely be thinking they can give a load of missiles to Ukraine. But the problem is that they need strategic stockpiles. And they say, just in case they get involved in a war with, say, China, they realize they've given a whole bunch of prime weapons away to Ukraine that could come back and haunt them. So it could be that Donald Trump is saying one thing and talking up the US and communicating how wonderful they are and how many Tomahawks they got. And on the other hand, Pentagon bosses might be going, shut up, mate. We can't give more than 20 to 30 away. US Defense Department has drawn up plans to sell or transfer Tomahawks should Trump give the order. This is an article in the New York Times, but providing the weapons would come with enormous challenges, not least the fact that Ukraine does not have the naval or ground-based launchers required to fire the missiles. It depends who's written this and how much knowledge they have of the situation, because we understand that there are actually launchers for these, the Typhoon launchers. But also Oshkosh Defense, as I reported, I think yesterday, showed its multi-mission autonomous vehicles series platform as it is for launching Tomahawk cruise missiles and multiple launch rocket systems, series munitions and Switchblade 600 strike drones. So a very kind of versatile bit of kit that, it's just been shown off now, and this one can fire Tomahawk cruise missiles too. So there is hope that Ukraine will have the infrastructure and the ability to fire these Tomahawks. Otherwise, they're going to be given a bunch of Tomahawks and they'll gather dust in a warehouse before the Russia blows it up. Right, just coming towards the end of this section, the United States is increasing pressure on Germany to finally deliver Taurus missiles to Ukraine. This comes as rumours circulate that although Trump is willing to provide Tomahawk cruise missiles, the reports that reportedly will only provide 20 to 50, as just mentioned. The US has around 4,150 Tomahawk cruise missiles, and Germany have around 600 Taurus and already have orders put in for these to be backed up with 600 additional missiles of a new variant called Taurus NEO. So I'll have to look into that at some point. In the meantime, Ukraine continues to fight for its survival. But interesting that the US might now be trying to get, in their desire to get everyone else to pick up the bill for the war other than themselves, it might be a case of, okay, you can use this, but you got to use your own stuff, and you got to use Germany's stuff. We're not going to provide you with this because we might get in too much trouble and it might be a bit escalatory, but we do want you to prevail, and so why not use these Taurus? If it ends up convincing the Germans they need to give Taurus to the Ukrainians, then I'm all for it. So Ukraine's delegation to the US held meetings with top defense firms Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin and RTX. So this is ahead of meeting Trump on Friday. These are producers of missiles, aircraft and air defense systems. Preparations are underway for Zelensky and his visit to Washington this Friday, where concrete agreements may be signed. Fingers crossed for that meeting. Now, speaking of RTX, I just thought I'd show you this because it goes to show, the development of these drones. RTX, in cooperation with Ordnance Aero, has developed the 40mm miniature air-to-ground missile, the MAGM, which extends a commander's unmanned platform reach to defeat enemy targets and increase unit survivability. So these are pretty sizable drones. MAGA has been successfully demonstrating from a small drone, proving its ability to fire stably from a platform agnostic P-click compatible launcher. Okay, translate that. You've got, and I think the range isn't like super great, 1 to 1.5 kilometers, says this source, but you've got the ability to be up in the air, to be scanning around for that threat, and then hit it when you see it. It's much more likely, I think, that you're going to see Russian planes through a drone sitting up in the sky than you are as a random random on the ground. So, you know, hopefully you might get a little bit more reach and better visuals from firing these things from up in the air. And of course, it's just safer. If you have a manpad, you are operating a manpad. It's on your shoulder. You are a target. You fire that off. You look where the puff of smoke comes from. Some spotters for the Russians, and then bish bash bosh, you can end up being fried. So, you know, using drones to do some of this work will, again, it's about substituting robots for humans, machines for humans, so you aren't losing the valuable human life. Okay, Germany plans to invest 10 billion euros, that's $11.6 billion in military drones in the coming years to help protect European and NATO airspace amid a rising threat from Russia, according to Defense Minister Boris Pistorius. So Germans are really taking Russia seriously at the moment. There's been this considerable uptick in I think urgency coming from Friedrich Merz as he's become Chancellor, and some of that cautious positioning from Olaf Scholz has been kind of tossed to the wind now. Okay, finally, wow. So for the future space forces of Ukraine may receive its own satellites within a year, according to People's Deputy Vanislavsky. Oh my goodness! So Ukraine could be operating their own satellites in space before the end of the year. Wow, that is some serious support from allied nations for sure. Okay, now going on to Ukraine's indigenously produced stuff. We're not looking at Shahed, but to give you a size of the Shahed, and I showed you this image this morning. The Shahed is a sizable drone, right? It packs a punch. It's going to have quite a payload on board, and yet here's the Sting next to it, the Wild Hornet Sting, that is and I think it says 600 aerial targets there. Their latest infographic, do I have it here? Yeah, is that actually Sting has taken out 900 drones, 900 targets over the course of the war since July 2025. Really impressive stuff, but it's worth seeing, I think, these Shaheds with your own eyes, which is why... Oh, no, it's in the Russia section. Let's bring it forward, which is why I thought this was quite important. So this is Radoslaw Sikorski, the Polish foreign minister, brought with him as he addresses the parliament in the UK. He brings along with him a huge Shahed drone to give people there the sense of how effective Shaheds have really been. I mean, they have been the scourge of the Ukrainians, and though the Ukrainians have done a marvellous job of intercepting them, they're finding it harder and harder because these are big things and they're becoming more and more capable as it's kind of a case of they are just tactically, technologically, they have become more and more difficult for the Ukrainians to deal with. And I think it's useful for politicians in another country to see these drones up close, get a sense of how destructive that they are likely to be if that was to smash into House of Parliament, and then the whatever 90 kilogram warhead goes off, you're going to know about it. But then, you know, that and then the other 400 that are following in its footsteps. A Ukrainian bomber drone here is on display. Here's a hexacopter, but my goodness, that is an impressive piece of kit. You've got the blades and then kind of a counter blade below, a bit like you see with the Alligator KO-52 attack helicopter. They have, I don't know what the technical words is, but blades that go in opposite directions. So there's some kind of it keeps it balanced in the air or whatever. I don't know the science. But you've got that on this larger drone here, hexacopter. So 6, well, actually not hex, it's whatever 12 a copter is, arguably. But this has a payload of 95 kilograms. What a capacity. So that could pick up an injured man, but it could also do a number of other very dangerous things, no doubt. It's huge, that bomber. Right, and then we are hearing, for the first time in ages actually, I've been meaning to say that we haven't heard from him for some time, the chief of intelligence has said, so this is Kirillo Budnov, he said that Russia would have already have been defeated if it wasn't for other supports. Budnov said, quote, Ukraine, with the help of partners, would have returned all the occupied territories if not for the support of the Kremlin by Moscow's allies, primarily North Korea. This is to indicate just how helpful North Korea and indeed China have been. I've said to you before, you dismiss North Korea at your peril. There is, I think, a reason why Russia were able to retake Kursk and then go down into Sumy. And it's because there was a proliferation of North Korean soldiers there who were also fighting for them in some capacity. So, dismiss these people who are helping Russia at your peril. Okay, final section is on, as I think, yeah, that's it for that section. Final section is on Russia. Just a couple of things to go through, really. First thing to say is that, again, we are seeing light aircraft be adapted to try and shoot down drones. In this case, it's a Russian plane or a couple of planes that have been adapted, as you can see in this Russia 1 news still. They've been adapted to carry machine guns for shooting down drones. But yeah, Russia 1 carrying that story. That's definitely a challenge for Ukraine, and Ukraine's going to want to get hold of some of its own aircraft. We talked about how helicopters have been really useful, and I want to use more of them. We talked about the A-10s earlier in a breaking news video. Okay, and then finally, as just to remind you, I walked you through a bit of this article the other day. So China, this is, I presume, New York Times, looks like. Behind Russia's battlefield drone surge in Ukraine, Chinese factories. So China, says Nell reports, has significantly helped Russia gain an edge in fiber optic drone tech, Beijing sharply increased exports of key components like fiber optics and lithium batteries for FPV drone production. By the way, I watched a video on sodium batteries today. So you've got these lithium ion batteries that are, very important for energy storage, for general batteries, but also for electric vehicles. And CATL, one of the main battery producers in China, has just developed this sodium battery that is half as expensive. In like minus 30 degrees temperature, it still operates at 80% capacity, and at 60 degrees temperature, it's still blah, blah, blah. It's safe. It doesn't like any kind of electric cars burning down or batteries blowing up. Doesn't happen. It can, in the context of a car, it can drive and be recharged for something like 2.6 million miles or kilometers or whatever. And it's just insane. And the energy density, I guess, per volume is higher. Half the price, more reliable, greater safety, and cheaper to produce, like way cheaper to produce. So all these people moaning about renewables and, Donald Trump talking about windmills and solar panels. Well, what about at night time or when it's not windy? Well, you bloody store the energy, you put it straight into the grid, and if you don't, you store it. but energy storage is just about a crash in price. These new sodium batteries are an absolute game changer. And they're going to be produced very soon. They've already been tested. It's done and dusted. These things are going to hit the marketplace and they'll be adapted. I mean, the only worry that people are saying is that all the competitors for CATL are just looking on and crapping themselves because they're behind the curve. And so, you might just have a bottleneck for the time being at least. But these new sodium batteries are huge in terms of changing the game. Now, question is, and I had no idea, I've not seen this mentioned at all in the context of drones, but could this mean cheaper, longer range drones? I don't know. I don't know how far we are away from seeing sodium batteries being out in the open marketplace and whatnot. But certainly plenty of videos on YouTube you can go and look at concerning sodium batteries, and that will also revolutionize renewables and electric vehicles. It is going to be huge. So then we have China significantly helped Russia gain an edge in fiber optic drone tech. Beijing sharply increased exports of key components like fiber optics and lithium batteries for FPV drone production. While claiming neutrality, China allowed a surge in parts that now fuel Russia's domestic drone assembly. And I reported on that the other day, but I did it in the hits and losses video. This is in the context of military aid. I'm just going to check very quickly to see if anything else has been announced, because it's going to be one of those days where things are just consistently announced. Ukrainian Defense Minister Shmyhal said he discussed recent successful deep strikes on Russian territory with the US counterpart. We need to do more. Combined sanctions, deep strikes and frontline pressure. Long-range missiles must be part of this. So I don't know if that's really talking about Tomahawks. Denmark is donating 147 million euros to boost Ukraine's combat capabilities as part of the 27th military aid package. The funds will go toward naval support for Ukraine's fleet, tank maintenance, 53 million euros specifically for training and education of Ukrainian soldiers, fuel and rehabilitation support. So that's fantastic as well. At the 31st Ramstein, Shmyhal urged partners to fully fund the $12 to $20 billion PURL plan for buying American stuff, provide $4 billion for drones, and focus on long-range artillery. He called for air defence ahead of the winter and asked allies to help cover $60 billion in defence needs via the 0.25% of GDP or loans backed by frozen Russian assets. I think you're going to see such a big pressure to release all the funding from the frozen Russian assets to take the pressure off allied nations from continually supporting Ukraine with their own funding. That's surely going to happen. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth delivered a message to Putin. It's time to end the war. If not, America is ready to act in a way only it can. Again, these big rhetorical threats, but then we've heard this from Trump, right? And then nothing. But I don't know if we should be taking Hegseth more seriously than Donald Trump. It seems weird to say that because I don't take this man particularly seriously. The question now is whether this marks a real shift or just another empty threat, says no reports. And that's the key, isn't it? Some horrible other stuff there. Yes, so I don't know if there's anything else. We've heard about the German support there. So anyway, any other news that comes out, emerges, it'll pop into my next military aid video, but there probably will be more coming from the meetings that have taken place today. Anyway, that's enough from me. Hopefully that was of use and informative. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.